Because as physicians, we're like all or nothing. We are 100% or we are zero. We are running and gunning, not eating, have a bladder that can hold like a liter or two. And we're not taking the time to just say, okay, what's one way that I can maybe swing back towards middle? What's one way that I can advocate for myself for my own basic needs? Because here's the thing, we're not even taking care of our own basic needs. Let's not even get into self-care as far as like massages and yoga and shit. That's whatever. For us, I mean, food, shelter, clothing, lights,
And sleep.
sleep.
So talking about challenges and the going into the medical field is not an easy task. One thing I noticed is you have a painting behind you. So let's talk about some of the things you do to balance a good work-life balance, because you've got a lot on your plate. How do you stay sane? Like I'm in residency and I can barely stay sane. I forget to eat sometimes. And I mean the little things, the normal things that I can't do. So can you give us a little input?
Absolutely. Like this is right in my life coaching position wheelhouse. Let me talk about it. Yeah, so that's one of my pictures. I actually did it just the other day. As part of my like life coaching world, I am so about community building and connection because we know community is the antidote to isolation and burnout. So that's right there, a group called Women in Medicine. It's in Vincent, Indiana. What we do is we meet every other month and we do an activity. So this last one was wine and paint, and we tried to do a Vincent Van Gogh, as you can tell. Mine turned out a little bit more creative maybe than Vincent's did, but that's okay. But we get together, we have no agenda other than answering two questions. What has been your greatest victory since we last met? What has been your biggest challenge? And then it just opens up because it's a group of female physicians from all different aspects, from all different walks of life, who are coming together and saying, we know that this is important and we hold safe space for each other. Talking about work-life balance, I see it less as a balance and more of a pendulum. So, sometimes life swings more to the work side. Like you got to get a project done. You've got to see you're on inpatient. You've got to like do those long hours. But what it is, it's reminding you to come back to that center. Just like with family, I have 3 kids. We're 8, 5, and 3. Don't tell me you're too busy because I know what busy is right now. As with farms, we are in the middle of fall harvest here in Indiana, and I'm running my own business. So when the life side starts to get a little bit crazy, that's when I remind myself too to breathe and take a breath and then come back to that center point. And that's normal. Like you're gonna have those swings of fluctuation. What you don't want is like the high extremes from one side for the other, and when you're sticking there, when you're not like a good pendulum that you know that you need to kind of course correct and swing back. Because as physicians, we're like all or nothing. We are 100% or we are zero. We are running and gunning, not eating, have a bladder that can hold like a liter or two. And we're not taking the time to just say, okay, what's one way that I can maybe swing back towards middle? What's one way that I can advocate for myself for my own basic needs? Because here's the thing, we're not even taking care of our own basic needs. Let's not even get into self-care as far as like massages and yoga and shit. That's whatever. For us, I mean, food, shelter, clothing, lights,
And sleep.
sleep, get it all.
Yeah.
That's how you can maintain and take care of yourself well. Once you have that base built, then I help start, and that's when you can start working on getting those higher levels of self-actuation and self-care. But so many times when I meet people, I'm like, I just go through those things. How much are you sleeping at night? What's your diet like? How are you moving your body? Do you feel good in your clothes? You were scrubbed every day because you aren't, because you have no clean clothes, because you have no time. Like getting those
No
basic
time in one.
things in place.
Yeah.
Like change your underwear every fucking day. Like, do that. That is important.
Yeah.
Don't like flip them inside out or like try to get by with it. Like, do your basic needs and do it unabashed.
Yeah.
Because as a human, you deserve that. I was just talking, so I consult for wellness for 2 different residency programs here in Indiana. And we're talking about, what the ACGM is putting out, which I 100% support, and I actually wish that they would do more in the level of wellness. And this other one was kind of on the other side of the fence. Like, we're producing like these kind of physicians. And I'm like, no, let me tell you, these are human basic rights.
Yeah.
And for decades, we have not been doing it, and we have not been advocating for our trainees. And then we get out, and then we burn out, like myself, and then we don't know even what to fucking do
Yeah.
besides leave. So I think it's absolutely appropriate that we have duty hour limitations, that we allow residents to go to doctor's appointments during work hours,
Yeah.
that we have basic human rights of employment
Yeah.
that
We
everyone
have
should.
designated lunch hour. We work throughout the day. So there are times where I've been on inpatient medicine, and honestly, I don't have time to eat. So when I grab my food, I do it at my workstation, but the nurses keep coming. And when they see me eating, it's such a rare thing for them because they're like, "Wait, she eats?"
Mhm.
Like they forget we're human. They
Yeah.
forget that we have to use the restroom, that we don't and it's mind-boggling to think that I mean, that's only expected of physicians. No other person in the medical field, they each have their own designated breaks. They have everything that's set out for them. But with physicians, we're expected to be on duty 24/7. There's no sleep. They'll call you at 2 in the morning and expect you to answer their questions. And it's mind-boggling to think that we don't have advocates. We take care of everybody, but we don't take care of ourselves,
Yeah.
which is
So I think
crazy.
it's really important for your audience to know that there are people like me advocating for you because
Yeah,
of our own experience and what we've been through. And the system's not perfect yet. And
yeah,
I know to be a whistleblower is a really scary thing. It is. Let's just be perfectly honest. Like, it's not always safe.
yeah,
Your position is not safe to speak up. And I hate that. I hate that. But it is one of those things that you can now be gaining more support for this. And here's my thing too. I was so blinded by it in residency. It was like, oh, this is just how we do things.
yeah. That's
So
a
with my first baby, I took 4.5 weeks of maternity leave because it was like, oh, this is how we do things. And I'm like not bleeding anymore. So I might as well like go start having and seeing patients again. I didn't have anybody advocating and saying, no, no, stay home.
yeah,
It was like, oh yeah, we understand, so you don't have to repeat a year. And I, looking back, wish that someone would have looked at me as young Errin and said, no, I know you don't see it right now and you don't understand it right now, but the best thing you can do right now is stay home with your baby
yeah,
and just be. But I was so stuck in like the grind and like going. I was even still like answering. People would call me and I would still get logging in
yeah,
Epic to see like what was going on. It's not healthy. And like sometimes you need somebody to shut you down
yeah,
and to and it's coming. I think as more people like myself who have experienced the bad side of it are coming back into medical education and saying, how can we make this better? How can we make this sustainable for everyone? And realizing that not everybody fits the mold, and that's okay.
yeah,
And that being inclusive is so much better than saying you're weak, leave, you're depressed, go. And saying and seeing the value of everyone in that. So to the trainees who are in there now, I just encourage you and say you are not alone and that help is available. Do not suffer in silence. But I also want to just build you up and say it can be better. When you get out, it can be better. Just like my own journey of like changing and like you better believe there was a lot of fear with that. There was a lot of fear of what are people going to think?
yeah,
And then there was a lot of fear of like, oh my God, what if I never find the thing?
yeah.
But if I never even started, how was I going to find the thing?
Mhm. Absolutely. So you hit some really important topics on the head. Like we talked about physician burnout. There's a huge rate of physician suicide that is not being addressed,
No.
which I think, well, I'd love to get your input on that. And then also clinical depression. I mean, we go through such an extensive amount of time in school and training and the work hours. I mean, how how should we approach this kind of stuff? Because there's not a lot of dialogue about it. We suffer, but we don't even talk to our own co-residents about this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So what
because you don't want to be outed.
you
You don't want to be identified.
negative.
So let's start with the burnout. It's there. I mean, if you are at all dissatisfied, disinterested, if you're frustrated, if you have thoughts of like leaving, you have signs of burnout. If you are physically exhausted, if you are just emotionally exhausted, like you have no feelings or you have all the feelings, or if you're even spiritually exhausted, but you're like, why am I doing this? What is my purpose and all that? Again, you have burnout. And I think too many times people are like, they push against being like, oh, I'm not burned out, blah, 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 I'm just tired. It's the job. You better fucking believe it's the job.
Yeah.
That's what burnout is. It's that situational stress that's based on the person that totally depletes you. And so a lot of times people come to me, and I actually wrote an article about this. Is it depression or is it burnout?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the symptoms so overlap that that's what scares a lot of people. Because if you get labeled as depressed, like I said, then you're triggering that mental health stuff with the licensing board that you have to attest to every time you re-up your license or every time you apply to a medical new state license. And I'm just to the point, one, we've got to change this around doctors having issues. Like, we can have bad gallbladders, but we can't have depression. Like, we can go and have a hysterectomy, but we can't have anxiety. Like, come on now. Let's really talk about this. But when it comes down to, is it depression or is it burnout? What I a lot of times tell people is, if you were to be fired today, do you think your symptoms would disappear? And 95% of people say yes. And I'm like, okay, it's burnout. It is. If it persists, yeah, then I think you're talking about like major depressive disorder going on. And then you need to get, some additional resources.
Mm-hmm.
But if it is mostly the job, it's burnout.
Yeah.
And I think too, so the physician suicide that you touched on, there's quotes of like 300 to 400 physicians a year. I think that's bullshit. I think it's double that. And here's why. Who fills out death certificates? We do. Who wants to protect our colleagues? We do. Who wants to maybe fudge the numbers so that that physician's family can get the life insurance policy? We do. I think the numbers are higher. And I think we should also count too, not just actual death by suicide, but career by suicide. You know how many doctors are leaving the field each year, either because of early retirement or finding other options? It's somewhere between 10 and 20,000 doctors a year right now. I mean, we are bleeding doctors out of the system.
Wow.
And so I don't want to downplay people's deaths, because I think that is super important to recognize. And I think that is absolutely underrepresented on causes of death. I think it's double. They say we lose one doctor a day. I think it's more like 2 or 3. I'll be perfectly honest. And I don't know if you know these statistics either, but for females in our demographic, so late residency, early career, about 40% of us have suicidal ideation, meaning we actually think about how our deaths would happen. Not that we have an intent that it would happen, but about 40% of us are thinking like, okay, I'm stuck. I don't know how else I would get out of this. I wonder how I would kill myself. And why that scares me so much is because doctors don't get second chances. We know how to do it, and we know how to do it right.
Yeah.
And also, honestly, most of us that are thinking about this long term, know how to do it and make it not look like a suicide. So car accidents, other causes of sudden cardiac arrests that don't get talk screens. There's a lot of other causes. And that's one thing I talk about with all of my clients. The one question I ask them is, do you have hope?
Yeah.
Because we know that a person who is hopeless probably has suicidal ideation. I mean, yeah, I think it's extremely important to talk about it. And I think it's extremely important to talk about how our jobs are killing our colleagues and they're killing our careers.
Yeah.
Instead of just pussyfooting around and talking about how we need to have more resiliency and how we need to have more time off. No. Because we know that burnout is 1/3 individual, 1/3 system that we work in, and 1/3 the culture. That means 2/3 of this issue is not ours.
Yeah. So what do you
It's
think is the
amazing.
solution to this?
What I think the solution is, I think it's more of us using our voice. First and foremost, I would encourage everyone to be as healthy as possible
Mhm.
in whatever way that looks like. If it's like me, where I needed to change positions, where I needed to get a life coach, where I needed to get, some my stuff just straight, because I was just so screwed up in the head, because there were so many things I thought I needed to be super doctor mom. And
Yeah.
that was the ideal. And I felt like I was holding the world on my shoulders, and I just could not do it anymore.
Yeah.
So whatever that means, by getting yourself well and healthy. If there's certain needs that you need to attend to. I worked with a doctor recently. Her mom was dying, and she felt like she could not leave her hospital and travel to the country that her mom was in to take care of her. And I was like, no, no, I'm calling your program director today,
Yeah.
today, if you won't do this. She ended up like going and having that conversation. But I mean, advocating for yourself for your own health, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what other people say about you. It doesn't matter how many patients you want to that want you to take care of them.
Yeah.
You live your own life for you, because there's always one more patient. There's always one more thing to see. But at when you go to bed at night, you go to bed with yourself. You need
Yeah.
to make sure you're first and foremost well enough. So that's my first thing. So get yourself well.
Mhm.
The second thing is really start to identify, what is it that you want in life?
Mhm.
For me, when I finished residency, I was like, I just want to get out of this place. I just want to be done. I want to have a job, and I want a paycheck every 2 weeks.
There you go.
But that was it. Like, no one challenged me to say, like, what do you want your mornings to be like? What do you want your day to be like? About how many patients do you want to see? Do you want to even see patients at all?
Mm.
And just really digging into, like, what is it that you want? Because guess what? You get to create that. It doesn't just happen to you. Yeah, there's all these jobs out there that you can look on LinkedIn or going to different hospital sites or Indeed. And yeah, they'll have a little job description, but is that really what you want? Because if it's not, you need to walk away from it. And I think the third thing is, after you're healthy, after you know what you want, is then having a structure on how you're going to go about this. Because it's great to have all these great ideas, but if you don't have an action plan in place, it's just like creating an H&P where you go see the patient and you do a beautiful physical exam, and then you get to the A&P and you're like, I don't know. It doesn't do any. Why is that person admitted?
Yeah.
So you've got to have that same plan for your life too, to say, okay, what are the things that I'm going to do to be where I want to be?
Yeah.
And just the fourth thing is remembering that life is a journey, is not a destination. Like, just because you're coming up and you're finishing residency, you got a whole path to go after that. And that was something I felt like I was climbing the mountain and I summited it, and I was like, now what?
Yeah.
Now what do I do?
Yeah.
And no one had prepared me for that next step. So just realizing that the thing you're doing now, there will be life after it. The thing you're doing 5 years from now, there's going to be a whole bunch more life after that.
Yeah.
Just prepare it like a journey, rather than like you're rushing to that destination to only get there and say, now what? Like,
Yeah.
you continue on. It's just
But
important to remind
you
that
know,
your practice will modify with you if you allow it.
it's crazy because sometimes medicine is engulfing, like it becomes our life, that we forget everything outside of medicine. We forget our family, we forget our friends, we forget
Mhm.
our own hobbies, because it's totally encompassing. Like in residency, all you eat, breathe, live residency. That's why they, like, you literally, the nurses tell me, they're like, do you ever go home? And I'm like, yeah, I go home to shower, sleep a little, and then I'm back at the hospital. So it's a really interesting thing, because we're there to take care of patients, but if we can't take care of ourselves, how are we supposed to take care of others?
And that's why I think the medical education system is so jacked up, because it's training you for that life, for when you get out and you just perpetuate it. And it's like, oh, no, 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 no. That's not really how it needs to be.
Yeah.
One doctor I was talking to, he describes he's quite a bit older. He describes his medical career as his mistress. And some of the times he gave her a lot of attention. But it wasn't till the end of his life, when he broke up with her, that he realized how much that he had missed and how much damage he ensued on those that he loved the most.
Yeah.
And I think that's the mindset you have to switch from. Life and medicine is not happening to you. You happen to medicine.
Yeah.
You
Your
show up
life
to
outside of
medicine
medicine
and
doesn't
make it what
stop.
you want.
Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. Absolutely.
because it's so important. I mean, whoever in residency talks about boundaries? Nobody. But
Mm-mm.
let me tell you, that's one of the most crucial life skills that you need.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about life coaching. Is it just
Yeah,
is it just for the people in the medical field, or how? First of all, how did you get into it, and then second of all, what are you doing with it? I'd love to learn more about it. And I'm sure the
sure.
viewers would love to learn more.
So how I got into it, like I said, I literally, the Google search was how to turn my CV into a resume. And there was a physician coach who she had a program called Entrepreneurial MD, how to turn your CV into a resume. That's how it hit in Google. That's how I found out about life coaching.
Dr. Google is the
And I
answer.
also, at the time, I was reading a book called You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. I would highly recommend it. It's an amazing $14 book on Amazon. Change your life. It's changed mine. And I started working, her name's Philippa. Started working with Philippa, and I was reading my You Are a Badass book. And I just realized there was so many things that I hadn't thought about, and so many things that I thought were like hardcore beliefs, like this is black and white, this is how it is. That when I was talking to her, she kind of started like picking that open and being like, is that true? Is it true that you have to work full time to be a doctor? And I was like, no, I guess you could be a doctor in other ways. She asked me, is it true that you have to go to an office to be a doctor? And I'm like, no, there's people who go to ORs and hospitals and urgent care. And she's like, okay. Is it true that you even have to work and still call yourself doctor? And that was a big one for me because I was like, ooh, like if I'm not practicing, would I still even like use my title? And she's like, why would you not use your title?
You earned it, yeah.
And I was like, oh. So that's what life coaching does. It brings in a perspective of one that maybe you haven't thought about
Yeah.
so that you can grow and expand yourself. And then also it kind of like laying out everything on the table that you can be like, oh, that was all in my head. And
Yeah.
it's amazing, I think, being a physician, talking with other physicians. I know where they're at. I've walked the walk. I've talked the talk. You know, you can go and have another life coach who's like business life coach or something like that, but they don't know residency. They
Yeah.
don't know 36 hours of call. They don't know delivering back-to-back babies and then having to rush to the NICU to resuscitate them. They don't know that, but I do. And so that's where I can call people on their bullshit. They can also be a shoulder for people to hang on to and to cry on because there's so much that we keep inside that we don't even tell our most loved people in our lives. We all have them. Those closets is what I talk about. That's a lot about what life coaching is. It's just about like cleaning out the clutter and really focusing on where do I want to go next and what's holding me back. And so that can come in all different forms or fashions. There's all sorts of kinds of life coaches. Like I said, you can Google it, you can look at it. What I think is most special about me is that um, I'm only 5 steps ahead of you. So it's one of those that I'm not going to tell you to do anything that I haven't done myself. I'm not going to challenge you with any questions that I haven't dealt with myself. And I'm not going to charge you a ridiculous amount of money because I'll be perfectly honest. If I want to make a shit ton of money, I'd stay in medicine. Instead, I really want to help people. And so my podcast is a good example of that. I bring guests on who are doing things kind of outside the box and we talk about it. But then at the end, I always give a kick of encouragement. And that's typically based off of my coaching model and what I do when I work with people. And I also always offer free calls to any residents and medical students that are out there. Because Lord knows you guys are living on ramen noodles and like leftover Gatorade from the attendant lounge. So
I've gained 20 pounds in the past year and a half because I don't have time to eat
yeah,
properly and we're sedentary.
yeah.
We sit in front of our computers. Inpatient medicine is like 90% you're in front of computers, 10%.
Don't you feel like some days like your brain is coming out of your ears? That's how I was. It was like such intensive work, but
Yeah.
like my muscles atrophied, but my brain was like
Our
oozing
posture
out
is
of my
so bad.
orifices. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. It makes me realize. First of all, I'm like I do not want to be a hospitalist. I cannot do this for the rest of my life.
Mhm.
But it's good because we're learning that is this what I really want to do? Hell no.
Well, and the thing is, too, I would challenge that. I would say that's not how you would be a hospitalist, because there are some hospitalists who just work 6-hour shifts. You know,
That's
they
true.
come in, they do admits, they pass them off.
Yeah,
You know, she does that, and she loves it because she works a 6-hour shift like 6 times a month.
yeah.
And, there's balance there. Like, she comes in, she's her badass doctor self. She works her 6 hours. She says, see ya. And then she goes and has some time with her family, and she does whatever else she wants. It's just like, just with that, like approaching it and saying, no, this doesn't fit me.
Sustainability.
Like, and remembering that. I remember telling my husband, what was I doing? I think it maybe was inpatient. I was like, do not let me ever do this or consider this later in life. Like, even though the money's really good, do not let me do this. That's when my Jerry psych position opened up to be a medical attending. He was like, whoa, whoa, you said you were doing inpatient again. But my inpatient consists of 3 hours a day, so it's like, it's different. And you have to have like those ideas and those boundaries, like, to bounce things off of. You just know what's not serving you now. You make a list of it, you remember it. And so then when you get out, you can be like, oh, nope, I said I wasn't going to do this. I don't like handling DKA and scripts. I don't like throwing lines in. And understanding why you don't like it. I never had a attending question me, but I really just like was totally turned off by C-sections. And no one ever like was like, they're like, okay, whatever, go
No.
do your first assist, get yours done, and then pass it off to the lower residents. It wasn't until my life coach was like, what about it was like, what does that bring up in you? That was her question. And I was like, there's just something unnerving to me about cutting a woman's body open and taking her baby out. Even though it's a procedure and I know all the like logical stuff about it,
No.
but it wasn't until I vocalized that I was like, oh, that's why I don't like C-sections. I, I just, there's something in me and who I am. I don't do well with that. And I really think that's important to start recognizing as you're going through training, that there are just going to be some things that just bring stuff up in you. Maybe it's something from your past. Maybe it triggers a memory in you. Maybe it triggers something else. Lean into that and look at that, because then you'll learn more about yourself and you'll be able to make better decisions in the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk about, going into family medicine.
Mhm.
You've shown us that, you could do so much in family medicine. You don't have to do just one thing.
Mm-mm.
So you talked about, you can work in the ER, you can work in correctional facilities, you're doing some attending work at a Jerry site.
Mhm.
So tell us a little bit more for our viewers, those who are interested in going into primary care and knowing that there are other things you can do besides either just hospitals work or just outpatient.
Yeah, I think it's really important as you guys are all thinking about what you're doing next, or if we've got some medical students listening, like, family medicine is not a death sentence. It's actually like the door to an amazing landscape that you can do.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can only speak from my personal experience because, I didn't do IM, I did family med. But just think of the colleagues I know, and these are all family medicine doctors. One of them runs her own obesity clinic. One guy I know does wound care. One gal I know is derm procedures, all she does in her clinic. I have several friends who are doing like public health with their own FHQC. Like me, I'm an independent contractor technically, so I can go and do whatever within the scope of family medicine.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I've done ER, I've done correctional, Gary Psych. I'm a faculty at a residency program. Telemedicine. I could go sub, and be a locums and do whatever.
Yeah.
So I guess what I want to emphasize is like, again, you hold your destiny. Like, if you get into family medicine and you really are turned on by emergency medicine, do emergency medicine rotations, do some critical care rotations so that you can do those procedures that are needed. And then find a really good emergency medicine department somewhere who is going to be able to nurture you, like the emergency medicine group that found me
Mhm.
and was like, hey, you're a very adequate physician. Like, let's tune you up and let's make you an ER doc.
Yeah.
That is available. You don't have to just be EM trained. Now, in some trauma centers, yeah, they may require that, but that's fine. But that's not your fit. Because if it was your fit, you go do emergency medicine
Mhm.
residency, or you'd at least, work on getting the accreditation. I mean, I took all the ATLS courses, got, real up on all the trauma stuff because we were a level 3 trauma center most of our stuff we'd ship out on a helicopter to the big city. But I mean, you can learn that stuff. Thank God for, neuroplasticity. You're not dumb. You're not any less smart than the EM residents. Like, it's just you took a different path. So I would just say, like, lean into that. Maybe you want to be a proceduralist and do like colonoscopies all day. I love you, not my jam, but maybe it is yours. Like,
Yeah.
so feeling like you've got to like fall in line and do that clinic work or, you know, do what the job description says. No,
Mm.
you can go outside the box. You have adequate skills. And even if you don't, you talk to that employer, you talk to that company and say, what else do I need to do?
Yeah.
And do it. And then go do that job and love it and flourish from there. And
Awesome.
so I guess what I'm saying is, like, don't let people tell you no just because you're family medicine. Because you're not just family medicine. You are fucking family medicine. And
There
you will
you
take things down if you absolutely want to. And if you want to do things different. I mean, there's integrative medicine, there's
go. Yes.
functional medicine. I'm a DO, so I do all my bone popping
Yes.
stuff.
Represent.
So there's no reason
Yeah.
to go in line. And I understand loan debt. Like I said, I'm an osteopathic physician. I went to a private university. You want to talk about big student loan bills? I know about big student loan
Yeah.
bills. That's going to get better, I think, in the future. Don't let that scare you and let it and make you take something that's not honoring to yourself and who you are. And the other thing that I would remind people too is you can't take care of everybody.
Mm-mm.
Like, everybody get that in their head. You cannot take care of everyone. That was one of my false beliefs, that I thought I was going to go out into a rural community. I was going to do cradle to grave. I was going to take care of everyone. Well, you know what? At the end of the day, nobody was taking care of me. I needed to make sure, first and foremost, I took care of myself. Because instead of pouring our cup out, everything that we give, it needs to come from the overflow. We have to fill our cup first and then spread our care, spread our kindness, spread our love to the patients that we care for.
Yeah.
Just remember, you can only take the amount of people you can take care of is a finite amount. Now, it's not stamped across your forehead, but I wish it was. I wish mine was like 432. Like, I knew exactly how much patient panel I could handle, but there is a number, and hospital systems are not going to give you a number. They're going to continue to push past. Excuse me. So you need to remind yourself, there's a certain number of people that I can take care of well,
Yeah.
and there's a certain amount of people that I can just blow through. Which one can you live with better? And know that.
Absolutely. So you mentioned telemedicine. Um, can you talk a little bit about that for us?
Sure. So the company that I work for is called Teladoc. It's the biggest in the US. It's a cash-based model where people can get on. I was nervous about it at first because, like, oh no, what if somebody like calls and they're having like a heart attack or they want antibiotics for pneumonia? What you do is you just frame it really well. And
Okay.
like, you get people's symptoms, you talk to them. Sometimes it's a video chat like this, a lot of times it's over the phone. And you just use your clinical skills. If it sounds like something that's bigger and that needs a physical exam and hands laid on them, you refer them to get that done. And the other thing too that I love about my company is that we're kind of antibiotic Nazis. Like, people are calling for their Z-Pack, you're not getting your Z-Pack
Mm.
because it's not indicated. This is likely a viral URI, and you talk to them.
Yeah.
And
That's good.
so I think it's a great way for people to access care. Is it the end all be all? Does it replace an office? Of course not. But you know, there's so many things. A lot of times, they're just calling to be like, what do I do for my kid? Or how do I handle this with my baby? Or do you think I should go to the ER? And
Mhm.
so we can like talk it through. And I think it's a great platform. I think it's the way of the future. It's definitely a way if you want to work from home and still use your skills. It's a lot of fun.
That's amazing. That's very amazing. Have you heard of direct primary care? You mentioned integrative.
Yeah,
Let's
DPC,
talk about
baby.
that. That's
It is
something
up
that
and coming.
I'm passionate about. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think it's a model that's going to keep just, as doctors are exiting the traditional system, I think
Yeah.
more of them are going to hop into DPC. If you're not in some DPC groups on Facebook, I would highly recommend that you are
What is
getting
it?
into them. There's several. There, a lot of them are private groups, so you have to have an invitation only. But you know, you got a person now who can potentially hook you up with that.
There you go.
But these are groups of physicians who are either practicing DPC or who are transitioning into DPC, who can give you guidance. Even our own AAFP now has a course that you can take on direct patient care, how to set it up, those kind of models. And the thing is with that, what you need to remember is you set it up how you want to set it up. There are no rules or regulations how you must absolutely 100% do. There's a few things that you have to do, but for the majority of it, it's not. I think it's a really great model if you're ready to kind of go a little bit off the grid,
Yeah.
honestly. I know several family medicine docs who are doing this and they're doing it well.
Yeah.
One gal, she's over in Southern Illinois. She's one of my best friends. Um, she works like, I think somewhere between 16 and 20 hours a week. She's got her little panel. It took her about 10 months to build it up, and she's happy.
There you
You
go.
know, is she killing it monetarily wise? No, but she doesn't care because she's working the amount of hours she wants. She's taking the care of the patients that she wants.
Yeah.
She has the income to provide for her family, and she's practicing medicine in a way she wants.
Beautiful.
I think potentially in the future, yeah, could she expand it? Could she bring on more providers, different services? Absolutely. But I think at the end of the day, just saying, does this serve me and does this serve who I am? TPC is an absolute great model for that. And I think more and more patients are becoming educated to it and they're understanding it a little bit better
Yeah.
than 5 and 10 years when it was first starting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we talked about a lot of things that, is wrong in medicine, a lot of challenges and difficulties. Let's end on a positive note. What do you
Absolutely.
love about medicine? What is something that, you want to talk to our viewers, those young women who are looking up to you, who want to be a badass female physician like yourself? What are some of your advice and things that, would help them get to your level?
There's nothing better than having that tenderness of a conversation with someone else. And even though maybe you're not able to prescribe a medicine to help them or give them a procedure they need, just that they are heard is
Yeah.
magic. And I lost that. Honestly, when I was burned out, there would be people filling out the PHQ-9 scores, and I'd look at it and I'd be like, mine's worse. But what I'm saying is that when you rediscover who you are and how you practice and you're able to deliver that to people, it is the most special connection that there is. And plus being able to make a life and a living off of that, it's amazing. So medicine is a phenomenal career. 90% of it can grind you down to the bone. You've got to find that 10% for you.
Yeah.
And I just want to encourage everyone out there, it's there. You were not put on this earth to be mediocre and just fall in line. Like if there is a desire in your heart, there is a certain patient population, if there's a certain way that you need to deliver medicine, you need to do. Because let me tell you, once I started walking my own path, once I started flying my own freak flag, it made all the difference. And I love my life now. 5 years ago, I couldn't. You know what I told myself, and I wrote this down in a journal, I looked at it the other day. I wrote in big letters, I want a life I don't have to take a vacation from. And today, my friends, I have.
That's amazing. That's incredible. I think it's truly humbling going into this field because you see patients in their most vulnerable state, and it teaches us how to be kind. And despite everything bad, every crazy thing that we go through, I think it's still a privilege for us to be able to do what we're doing. And yeah, it can get hard sometimes, but there is hope. There's something that you can look forward to. And
Absolutely. I look at it this way. Everybody has a story that they're writing. And if I get to write one sentence or one paragraph in their story, I'm just honored.
absolutely. Dr. Weisman, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure. And honestly, I have so much respect for you, for what you do, and taking your precious time out of your schedule to give to us and our viewers. It's been such a pleasure.
Well, I am just so glad to be introduced to your audience. If anything resonated with anybody, let me know. I love hearing feedback. Contact me. We'll put the link to my website down there. You can come hang out with me there, my podcast. I'm all over Instagram and LinkedIn. So come find me in those places. Hang out with me. Get a little bit of sass in your life
There you
and
go.
just know you're not alone.
Absolutely.